Chapter 1. Mina. Mina, those orders aren't going to deliver themselves. The cook called out from his place behind the stove. Mina huffed out a sigh and rolled her eyes at the man standing behind the counter. Pete, if I could get them out there any faster I would, she said as she approached the man in question. She glared at him as he turned to face her. Pete smiled at her glare. Of course he did. Mina was hardly intimidating at 5'2" and weighing, well, there's no need to discuss that number. I know, I just like to give you a hard time, was his response. She shook her head in exasperation at her best friend. You're dead to me, Peter, you hear me? She said, laughing as she grabbed the plates he had set on the counter in front of her. His booming laugh sounded behind her, making Mina smile. She made her way back out into the dining area with the food, expertly avoiding a collision with a loose toddler making a run for the fish tank. Mina sighed. She had told Verna countless times that the fish tank was a hazard. Each time, Verna had either ignored her or insisted that it provided a soothing atmosphere. Exhibit A of said toddler would argue with that logic, though. Mina glanced behind her to ensure that his parents were on their way to corral him before moving on with her waitressing duties. It had been a year since Mina had returned to Maple Falls, 6 months since she had started working in the diner. And, as much as she grumbled, she truly loved her job here and the people she worked with. It had been very good for her, in fact. It provided her with a sense of family that she hadn't felt in a long time. Her mom had passed away from cancer when she was 12 years old. Her dad was still living, but he had remarried and retired to the coast. They stayed in touch by phone and visited in person as often as they could, but it wasn't the same as having the support right there with you. The fast pace of the diner also helped to keep Mina's mind from treading into the murky waters of the past that threatened to overwhelm her at times. Those were waters that could take her down and hold her prisoner for days if she wasn't careful. It also helped that one of the people responsible for those murky waters had fled the town right before she did. Unlike her, he had not returned and had not been in contact with her since then, and she was A-okay with that, well, most of the time. And the other person who troubled the waters was sitting in a jail cell miles away. Those were memories that she preferred to keep securely locked away, and the diner was a big help with that. If her mind was busy with other things, then it couldn't dwell on the past. Mina liked her life now. On most days, one might even say she was perfectly content, and that's the way she wanted to keep it. She didn't need fancy cars, high-end clothing, or a high-profile job. No, she just needed peace and quiet. Though there had been some odd occurrences around her home recently that made her on edge, made her second-guess herself, and the old fears start to seep back in. Not that the police were taking her seriously. Well, except for one of them, Luke Lawson. He of the murky waters, and Mina, had gone to school with Luke, though he had been a few years older than them, and they hadn't really run in the same circles. Still, he had been nothing but kind to her, listening each time to her fears, and at least pretending to take notes. If he didn't believe her, he never showed it. He could sure show a thing or two about Southern hospitality to his colleagues. Nothing Mina could do about that, though. Mina delivered some more orders and went back to the hostess stand to greet any new customers who may stop in. Furnace was one of only 2 restaurants in the tiny town of Maple Falls, Missouri. The owners of each restaurant, who were sisters, had come to an agreement long ago. In fact, it was about the only thing they did agree on. Furnace would cater to the breakfast and lunch crowd, Sadie's would serve the dinner crew and provide a date-like atmosphere for those in need of such. If you wanted a nice, sit-down dinner, then you went to Sadie's. If you wanted cheap and unhealthy, yet totally satisfying and delicious, then you went to Verna's. Mina worked mainly at Verna's, but had been known to help out at Sadie's when she got in a bind for good waitstaff. You do know a customer walked in, right? Pete asked from over her shoulder. He was the first friend Mina made when she returned to her sleepy little hometown. In addition to the restaurants, Mina worked part-time at the local hospital doing housekeeping. She shopped and she also picked up an odd job here or there around town when the need presented itself. Stop sneaking up. It didn't leave her much time for herself, but there weren't many options to make ends meet in this town. He had the nerve to take what she could get. It wasn't after all, it wasn't just herself. He had no idea how to threat this person posed to her carefully constructed. She sighed and swiped a hand across her forehead. This was one of the busiest days showing him the door. While Pete was just thankfully it was almost closing time. Why had she volunteered to pull a double shift when someone called out sick again? The racing her pocketbook was just in reaction to Pete. Her feet were currently screaming in protest. It had nothing at all to do with the man who had just walked through the door. The doorbell chimed, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Verna joined them and followed their gaze. Mina would never figure out why customers insisted on pushing the boundaries of ordering so close to one hunk of eye candy. It was just downright rude if you asked her. With a hand. Still, more customers meant the possibility of more tips. Though there was a glimmer of humor in his eye, and the cost of gifts wasn't getting any cheaper. Oh, not for me, my boy. She pasted on a smile and started to walk out of the kitchen to greet the possible nuisance of the late customer, the only one for me. Hoping they were just there for our little Mina here. Her fake
If
smile
Verna
turned
only
sour,
knew.
though, as she saw
No,
who
thank
had
you,
just
Mina
come
said
in with
with
a
a
shake of her head.
I'm good with
the
the
right
single
word.
life. I have other
Mina
priorities
skated to a
that take
stop and
precedence
jumped
over
back around the
dating.
corner before he
Other
saw her.
priorities that would be
The man
quite the
stopped
shocker
just
to
inside
said
the door to
customer,
read over
actually.
the menu board above the hostess
Well,
station.
don't let your good years
No,
pass you
it
by,
couldn't
honey.
be.
Could
You're
it?
a wonderful woman.
She
Any
peeked
man
back
would be
around the
blessed to
corner.
have you
Yep,
on their
it
arm.
could.
Thanks, Verna. Really,
The
I
forbidden
appreciate you
memory
looking
drawer
out for
rattled
me.
in her brain.
Always,
And
sugar,
threatened to
always.
explode as she took
The
one
phone
last
rang and
look
Verna
back
bustled
around
off
the
to
corner
answer
at
it.
the man.
Mina cast another
Her
look
heart
at
felt
the
like
new
it would pound
customer
out
and
in her
wondered
chest.
if it was
She
too late
so
to go
didn't want or
homesick.
need this.
Are you going to
He
stand there
wasn't
and make
supposed to
googly
be
eyes
here.
at him
Mina
all
had
night,
made
or
sure
maybe see
he
if he
hadn't
wants some
returned
food?
before moving back.
Mina elbowed Pete.
She had a nice,
In the
peaceful
ribs.
life
He
there
did
in Maple
deserve
Falls.
that.
She did
She was
not
not
need her
making any
estranged
kind of
husband,
eyes at
Max
the
Morgan,
customer
disrupting
at all.
that.
Thank you very
And
much.
that is exactly
Certainly
what he
not
would be
googly
if he
eyes.
saw her here.
Maybe
A
an icy
disruptor.
chair, though.
Like one of those
She
annoying
had a
gnats
few
that just
reserved
keep
just
buzzing
for him.
around your head
If
and
looks
never
could
go
kill,
away,
he would
no
be
matter how
gone.
many times you slap
I'm
at
going,
them.
she said, shooing Pete back to the kitchen. Mina did not want an audience for this confrontation that was about to happen. She had no doubt that is exactly what any conversation between herself and Max Morgan would turn into. There was no way that Pete could know the history that she and Max had. Pete and Verna had moved to Maple Falls shortly after they had split up 5 years ago, and she had resolved never to mention the man in question ever again. That, of course, was out the window as soon as he walked through that door. Mina waited until Pete was back at his station behind the stove and then peeked around the corner again. Max was now standing at the hostess station, looking around for someone to see him. Pete was right, though. She couldn't hide out back here all night. She was the only waitress working. She had to stop being so nice and volunteering for things. Look at the trouble it got her in. She took a deep breath to ground herself, said a prayer for strength, and walked out of the kitchen. Good afternoon. I'll be your server today. Are you expecting anyone else to join you? She started, trying to sound cheerful. It sounded forced to her ears, but she hoped it sounded more authentic to him. Mina looked down at the menus, pretending to organize them as she talked. Maybe he wouldn't recognize her. It had been 5 years after all. Just because she could pick him out in a crowd didn't mean he remembered what she looked like. He was the one who told her he didn't love her anymore. Well, fancy seeing you here, Minnie, Max said, humor in his voice. Apparently Mina was wrong. He did recognize her. She gulped and looked up. Same clear blue eyes staring deep into her soul. Same blonde hair, though carefully styled now instead of the unruly, curly mop from their high school days. Max Morgan, her estranged husband in the flesh. He was smiling at her, and she felt her knees weaken. Mina returned his smile with a steely look. Nope, forget about it, mister. He was not melting the ice around her heart with that smile. Not again.